Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're doing not re-examination, but we're doing an update on one of my favorite rifles, the Bushmaster ACR. Now, we did a video previously, which I'm going to definitely point you to. It was called From Masada to ACR, which basically talks about the history of how this weapon platform was designed by Magpul and then was sold to Bushmaster. And also Remington was also available for military contracts. Bushmaster took care of commercial. Remington took care of the military contracts because this weapons platform was put into the individual carbine program. This rifle here is one of my favorites. It's probably one of the biggest shames in small arms history, military small arms history, because of the amount of potential that it had versus to what ended up happening. And unfortunately, all we can say is the fact that Magpul sold it to the wrong company. They sold it to a company who failed to bring it to market in a reasonable time, and then the promised price was like 3 times that price of what they offered it, what Magpul said it was going to be, and which was a real shame because you're looking at a rifle that went for almost $3,000, even to this day when you can find them they're still that expensive. But we did a video previously on that, and that gives you that really good history. Now, what we're going to talk about now is some of the updates. Now, there's been several updates that have gone to this. No thanks to Bushmaster, but there has been a couple that have. Now, when this rifle initially was developed, it was developed around the premises that this was a multi-caliber system, where it was a quick change barrel. Well, unfortunately, it took many, many years before Bushmaster would offer a second caliber. It was offered in 5.56 millimeter to begin with, at a 16, a 10.5, a 14.5, a 18.5 DMR barrel. That was what was offered. And other companies that come on to bring out additional calibers such as 6.8, 6.5 Grendel, 7.62 by 39, 300 Blackout. Now, when I first saw this rifle, it was around 2006, 2007, and that was right when it first came out. It took me a while to get my hands on one. The rifle I was quite impressed with. The only thing I really noticed the fact was it was extremely front heavy. It was one of the flat dark earth. And oddly enough, the first one that I had a chance to take a look at had an immediate recall on it. They were saying there was a problem with the fire control group, which surprised me because it's basically an M16 fire control group or Area 15 fire control group. And it was having non-conforming burst, which means it would go a couple, 3 shots on auto. The rifle that I had, they wanted me to send it back. Well, I didn't have any issues with my rifle, so I said, no, let me keep it, let me do my review. And it was a review for Small Arms Review. I was pleased with the accuracy. Again, the only thing I really could fault the thing with was the fact that it was very, very muzzle heavy. It was the 16-inch barrel. It had the standard AAC type flash suppressor on it. That rifle, I would have liked to have kept it, but unfortunately, I lived in the People's Republic of New York at the time, where I couldn't keep it. So when I got here to Texas, I wanted to do a revisit of it, and I bought one of the rifles. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the updates that have come up with it. First one is going to be the charging handle. The original charging handle was reversible left or right side. Bushmaster had now finally come out with a ambidextrous charging handle. And handguards. Initial handguards there was 2. You had a Magpul at that time. This was basically the predecessor to M-Lock. And then you had the quad mill standard 1913 rail. They would have their own square drop as well as the mill standard 1913, and then they would come up with eventually with an M-Lock. And unfortunately, those were extremely expensive as well. The way I had this one set up here is with the initial 1913 rail, quad 1913 rail, which I was quite fond of. Now, just to go over this, very relatively quickly, because we do have a previous video, which again, that's really the one I would like you to take a look at because it does show all the details. And it's really interesting looking at the lineage from the initial rifle to all the changes that were made by Bushmaster. But the stock we have in the rear here has become an extremely popular stock. This has been adapted to several other weapons platforms, including the XCR, the SCAR. In fact, even you'll see pistol braces that are made like this. You have an additional side folding. You would have telescopic, and you'd have a cheek riser for utilizing optics. You have a extrusion upper receiver, aircraft grade aluminum. The sights that came on here were the Magpul standard polymer sights. This was initial equipment that came with it. Again, this rifle, because it was a Magpul design, had a lot of Magpul features. In fact, if you look at the checkering on the pistol grip, you'll see it's the Magpul symbol. The pistol grip has a similarity to the Magpul Myad, a very comfortable grip. Now, if you look at the lower receiver, the way the controls are on it, you have a combination bolt catch, bolt release that is the same as that of a FAL, so it's ambidextrous. So it can be actuated with the trigger finger, left or right hand. You have ambidextrous magazine release as well. You have an ambidextrous safety. The safety is one of those things that was a little bit hard to work with, and there's been several companies that come up with aftermarket safeties that are a lot more easier to utilize. You do have QD points on the stock. You do have 2 of them on the handguard up front here, and you do have them up front, the handguard as well as rear, so they're QD sockets. You look at this as modular. It comes apart. The barrel's 4140 chromoly vanadium steel. These particular ones were chrome plated as well. These initial 5.56s came in both 1 in 9 and 1 in 7. Bushmaster, as a rule, always liked 1 in 9, and that was a complaint that they had, so eventually they had to make 1 in 7. This particular one, when I ordered it, I wanted it as a 1 in 7. You have adjustable gas valve. You have suppressed and unsuppressed. This particular muzzle device you have on here is an ASR mount for my silencer co-suppressors. Again, you have 1913 rail. We do have the mana rail protectors on here as well. We do have a code for 20% off of those, which is in our description box. These are definitely necessary on here. Once this gun gets hot, it does get sort of hard to hold. With having the polymer stock on here, you have to have the attachment points to add your 1913 rails. 1913 rail, much more of a good military rail, which is what I preferred on here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this apart relatively quickly because I do want to show you just how it comes apart and just basically what the modularity of the system is. So first off, taking a look at the charging handle, again, it's ambidextrous. So we have 3 push pins. We push all 3 in from left to right. So that will immediately open up like an AR-15 does. So what we're going to do is we're going to push from the front, and now we're going to remove the lower receiver. I'll pop the QD point on here as well. Now we see we have the ambidextrous bolt release, so you can see the bolt release right here. So much like that of a FAL. Magazine release on the right, magazine release on the left, and you have your ambi safety. Now looking at the trigger compartment, now this trigger here originally was a standard AR-15 M16 type that came into a modular shell here. This one here has been replaced by a Geisley. This is one of the upgrades I had done to it that drastically increases the quality of the trigger. I do believe these are still sold by Geisley, but this gives you a good double-stage trigger. We look at the stock assembly. You can lift that right up, and there's your stock assembly, and there's your lower grip module. So now when we pull the bolt back, now we're going to remove the bolt. So now we have to make sure we have the cocking handle all the way forward, and now we can pull the bolt carrier group right out. When looking at the bolt carrier group, we can see we have a total AR-18 bolt carrier group. So this is very much identical to that in every which way. Now we can remove the recoil spring. Now remove the bolt carrier. Now to remove the bolt assembly and firing pin, very simple. Same as that as the AR-180, AR-18. We have a firing pin spring. We have the cam pin, and we have the bolt. Now the bolt is very similar to that of an AR-15, M16, but it is different. You can see the whole tail is very different. You have your standard extractor, ejector. Now, is initially designed to change calibers, for instance, 6.8 SPC, which we're going to be discussing. This is all you're going to replace. It's just the bolt. Other companies have made modifications to do other calibers, such as 7.62x39, which require the replacement of the firing pin as well. Now to remove the handguard, we flip it over. You push inward on the pin. As you can see, this is all done without any use of any tools. A bullet tip can do it. And here we have it. And now we have the barrel assembly and the barrel locking mechanism. Now from this point, we're going to talk a little bit about the barrel change. Now this here, quick change barrel, is the premises for the entire modularity of this weapons platform. As initially developed, it was designed to be able to remove the barrel at user level to standard barrel, different barrel lengths to 10.5, 14.5, 16, 18.5, whichever the mission would call for by the end user. And that was very simple. You would pull the lever back, push inward on the detent. We would rotate, pull the locking collar off, and now we pull the barrel right off. And there's your modularity. There's your barrel system. As you can see, we have the operating rod and the gas system that's all stays in one piece. So now we have the 5.56. Now we're going to talk about the different calibers. Bushmaster finally, after probably well over a decade, decided to release a new caliber. And that caliber was the 6.8 SPC. This would be the Spec 2, which would be the more modernized one that was a more modernized chamber that was developed for a full-powered 6.8 SPC, which in the end never made much of a difference because no manufacturers really made the ammunition because of the inner lack of changeability with the Spec 1 chamber. And all that was required to change this out from 5.56 to 6.8 was the installation of this barrel into the lower receiver. And that'd be very simple. All you would do is you would place the barrel in the collar, lock in the locking collar, hear it click, lock into place, and now we've gone from 5.56 to 6.8 SPC. And the next thing all we would have to do is change out the bolt to the 6.8 SPC, and then we would go with the magazines. Now there's two magazines that we used. The first one was the C Products Defense. Now, as you're going to see from the range footage when we shoot this, there was one issue and one issue only. 100% reliability. That's been one of the problems with the 6.8 SPC magazines, was being reliable in feeding. And we had that. Now, for some reason, the Duramag would not lock open on the last shot. Now, this is only the ACR that I have seen this with. I've used these magazines in several other platforms, including the LMT, MRP, including the XCR, and some other ones as well, and those lock back to the rear. So there's something with the compatibility of the bolt catch on this versus the other models. But 100% reliable feeding. Now the next one we had reliability in feeding as well as locking open to the rear was the PRI. Now for many, many years the PRI magazine has been the standard from which all 6.8 SPC magazines were judged. Now the feeding reliability is a little bit better, I would say, with the Duramag due to the fact that the shape gives you a more accurate shape of the contour of the cartridge case. But both these magazines work perfect. Duramags just for some reason did not like having to lock open on the last shot, but there's no problem with the feeding. But this was the main thing. Now, Bushmaster had decided in their infinite wisdom, just before they stopped producing the rifle, when they had the problems with Freedom Group, they made a 450 Bushmaster as well. Now, of course, the 450 Bushmaster is an incredible cartridge. It's definitely a good cartridge for hunting, anything that's in North America. Ammunition is readily available, unlike the 458 SOCOM. The ammunition was available. Now, Bushmaster has also, there had been, not that I've ever seen, but they've also made barrels in 300 Blackout. Now, the 300 Blackout would probably be one of the most popular cartridges you could have the platform in, but most of the barrels I have seen for 300 Blackout were always aftermarket. They were not made by Bushmaster. Bushmaster has very poorly supported this rifle. When you look at the potential of what it was designed for with all of its modularity, Bushmaster never gave it the due that it was given. Now, for as far as military contracts is concerned, not Bushmaster, but Remington has put in over the years. They put them in for military trials, and probably one of the most significant military trials was the individual carbine program. The rifle did not really fare that well, unfortunately. There's been some other programs throughout the years that they put in as well, but for some reason the rifle was never finalized. I really think back to Magpul, if they would have gone a different way, if they would have gone with a different company, one that was more in tune with military contracts and military production, they probably would have had a much better chance of having this rifle see what it was, because this rifle did have the potential of being an ex-U.S. military service rifle. It did offer a lot of benefits over the current platforms for as far as modularity, for as far as being able to do all different missions, whether it be switching from an urban environment with a short barrel to a environment such as Baghdad, where you're mostly close quarters, where you could have a 10.3 or a 14.5, as well as turning it into a containment rifle or a DMR type rifle. It had that potential as well. But it was never ever realized, and that was basically due to Bushmaster. Now, supposedly, as the rifle went to Bushmaster, it was not producible. There was no way that they could actually put it into mass production, so there had to be a whole bunch of redesign for them to be able to do such. And that was delay after delay after delay. Supposedly, Magpul engineers did work with them on that to try to get this thing ready to get it into prime time. But there was a lot of hype that went around it because of the fact that it was made by Magpul. And when it did finally come out, people were really excited until they saw the price tag. So when testing this rifle at the range with the 5.56, we had tried numerous types of magazines without any malfunctions whatsoever. So we're going to go to the range. We're going to see how this shoots with 5.56 millimeter. So as you saw from the video, it wasn't much to see. It worked. No matter what magazines we put in it, no matter what ammunition we put in it, it always worked. The Magpul magazines were primarily used because that's what it was designed around. This was all designed around Magpul furniture and Magpul accessories. Now we started looking at the 6.8 SPC, which was really the focal point of the video. This was the first time I had an opportunity to fire it in 6.8, and I have to say I prefer firing this rifle in 6.8. For as far as recoil, for as far as fit, finish, feel, accuracy, I was extremely pleased with it. Now, the ammunition that we tested with this was we tried 5 different ones. First one was a Hornady Black, 110 grain VMAX with a velocity of 2,593 feet per second. Federal Fusion, 115 grain soft point boat tail, 2,856 feet per second. Hornady 110 grain ballistic tip, 2,590 feet per second. Federal XM 68 Gold Dot, 90 grain Gold Dot hollow point, 2,879 feet per second. And PPU match 115 grain boat tail hollow point, 2,624 feet per second. Now, we fired 580 rounds. 500 of those were just the PPU alone. We're going to take this to the range and we're going to see how that shooting went. Reliability was stellar. Again, the only issues that came up was with the Duramags with locking back on the last shot. I did call Adele over at over Durmag to see what the issue was, and he had said that they didn't ever test them in the ACRs. They didn't have the ACRs there, but it's something they wanted to do. But the reality was, I can't say it was a defect in the magazine because it worked with everything else. But for as far as the feeding and reliability, it fed with no issue whatsoever. The best group was with the Federal, the XM68 Gold Dot. That was 1.3 inches. Now, this is designed as a military rifle, not as a match-grade rifle. So the accuracy was very good for a rifle that was designed, especially a rifle with a removable barrel. So I was quite happy with 1.3 inches. Now, all of them were sub 2 minute of angle. All the ammunition that we tested, there was no issue with that. The platform was very accurate. The barrel was very accurate. We did try suppressed on a couple shots, but not much of an issue. There wasn't really anything noteworthy on firing it suppressed, but there was no problem firing it suppressed either. Now, the optic we chose was the Vortex Viper PST 1:6:24 Vortex optic with a Vortex mount. We also had the Magpul 2-point sling on here as well. As we mentioned previously, we had the Manton 1913 rail covers. We have the Magpul Mo vertical front grip, which was 1913 rail. That's the way this one was added onto it. And as I said previously, we got the updated catch on here. Now, this rifle had to go back to Bushmaster. And the initial issue was when we went to the 6.8 SPC, it liked to eject the magazine by itself. So regardless of what type of magazine it was, you'd fire a shot or two and the magazine would drop out. So it went back to Bushmaster. Unfortunately, at the time that it went back to Bushmaster was the time they were shutting down due to the Freedom Groups getting ready to sell. It took me probably 3 to 4 months to get the gun back for them to replace the mag catch. Once they replaced the mag catch, I had no problems since. But it was interesting with the 5.56. This rifle had a lot of rounds through it in 5.56. We're probably talking a couple thousand easy, and never had that issue. So that was unique to the 6.8. For some reason, the way the recoil was, it just made that that mag catch bounce out to release that magazine. Overall, excellent on the two calibers that it was tested with. I did try to get my hands on a 450 Bushmaster upper receiver from it, but unfortunately at the time, my contact over at Bushmaster was let go, as well as most of the people were over at Freedom Group during the prior to the sale. So I was never able to get one of those. Now, there has been some other companies out there, Templar Precision. Templar has made a lot of headway for as far as this rifle is concerned. They've made new lower receivers. They've done barrel conversions. They've really picked up where Bushmaster has left off with new equipment. So if you're interested and you do have one of these rifles, you're looking at for some different conversions, you're looking at for some new lower receivers or modifications, I would get a hold of Templar Precision. So I do hope you all enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, even better share. And please consider being part of our Patreon family. We are viewer funded. Thank you.